Cool. So let me. Well, welcome. She's just to offer us a support. Very good. Perfect. So we are starting then with round 2 of PyData's remote summer meetup. And I have here with me now Lorena Balan, a very fierce lady. So Lorena Balan is a software engineer from the University of Bristol. She challenges her team with her very high standards in communication, so as I heard. Today, she'll be speaking to us about Kedro, McKinsey's and Quantum Black's first open source workflow library for implementing and using software engineering practices in the data machine learning pipeline context. Welcome, Lorena. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that intro as well. I really like the ears. I'll wear a t-shirt with that. So let me share my screen. Cool. And hopefully you'll be able to see my slides in a minute.
Yes, we can see everything. It's all good.
Cool. Can you see my slides and not my slide notes?
Yes, exactly. You can see only the slides. Don't worry.
Cool. All right. So thank you everyone for giving a bit of your time this evening. I'll be talking to you about Kedro and more specifically about building production level data pipelines using it. And I want to say straight off the bat, when it comes to coding quality, some will say that your work does not touch the production system, and so the code therefore does not need to be of a high standard. But we are here to challenge that notion, and we might argue that common outputs can actually be considered production. So, for instance, your academic research paper, if you might want to try and run it many times so you can present the same results more accurately. You may have a modeling pipeline you wrote, and it scores some data into a CRM database. And if your model gets enough traction, then the business will want to roll it out to other teams. So production code is basically any code that feeds some business decision process. And since data science is by design meant to affect business processes, most data scientists will want to write code that can be considered ready for production. So who am I and why am I here talking to you? As Leigh said, I have a background in computer science at the University of Bristol. I worked as a software engineer for an investment bank just before joining QB. Joined QB in March 2019, so just over a year ago. And ever since, I've worked on Kedro, where I've been one of the core contributors. So I'll start with the Kedro story. But before that, just to make sure that we are using the same terminology. So what is a data pipeline? It's process of taking data from a source or a few sources, doing something to it and putting it somewhere else. And that doing something to it might be a machine learning pipeline. What is production ready code? I kind of talked about it in the beginning, but it's the idea of if I run the same code with the same data in the same environment, I should get the same result. And ideally, it needs minimal interventions and alterations to move it from exploration to production. It's also nice if it's atomic and broken into smaller, well-defined tasks. And then what are data engineers, data scientists, and machine learning engineers as we define them in QB? Data engineers are the people that can operate in any data environment, and they work with the data scientists to reach a master table. That master table then is used by the data scientists who leverage their advanced analytical tools and techniques to extract insights. And then finally, the machine learning engineers deliver the model and the data science code into production. So why does Kedro exist? It started as a journey a few years ago. We've learned from a large collection of client engagements what worked well, and more importantly, what didn't, particularly by being exposed to a lot of unclean, problematic data. And we've worked to codify and standardize the workflow. We have a product mission and some objectives. We have diverse teams of various different levels of software engineering knowledge. So how do you make all these people speak a common language? So we say that it's with empathy that we come and say, how can we tweak your workflow so that our coding standards are the same? And then as for objectives, we distinguish a primary and a secondary one. Firstly, we define success in terms of client independence. So data pipelines are not a static thing, like a one-off. They're organic and they're subject to change in the future as data could change. So we want the clients to be able to maintain that pipeline after we leave, understand what's going on inside it, and know where to intervene. And then secondly, we have to, we aim to spend time on the problem statement, the model optimization, etc., not on code refactoring or scrambling at the end to put something productionizable together. We need a seamless way to quickly move from experimentation to production ready. So then came Kedro, an open source library. You can just try it out by doing pip install Kedro. And we like to think of Kedro as the middleman between machine learning and software engineering. It's an open source library, as I said. It's actively maintained by a team of software engineers in QB. I've broken it down into 4 main beneficial components of Kedro. Project template, which is a series of files and folders. It's based on the cookie cutter data science setup. Ideally, if I have enough time, I will go through a very quick demo at the end, so you'll see what I'm talking about. Configuration, so say goodbye to hard-coded file paths all over the place. This is a place also where you set your logging, your credentials, your parameters. And then what we call the data catalog. It's an extensible collection of data connectors, and it's how you interact with the data, whether it's reading or writing. And then we have nodes and pipelines, an abstraction on top of what is basically a set of instructions and their associated interdependencies. And I'll go through and explain each of these independently. So what is a project template? So when you start a Kedro project, these are some of the main files that you get. They're modifiable, so they're open for you to alterate. There's built-in support for Python logging. As you can see, we have a tests folder, and that's because we support test-driven development, and there's integration with PyTest. We use Sphinx for documentation, notebooks folder for an experimentation workflow, and logs, to, as I said, for logging. So what does this help with? You spend less time digging around your various modules and various files of code. You kind of know where everything is, and it makes it easier for collaborators to join in and work with you. And you kind of don't have to think of how you're going to structure your code base from the get-go. This is kind of taken care for you. There's the configuration folder, which is an important one. And that's where you define requirements for data logging and parameters for different environments. It's nice because it helps you keep all the parameters in one place, so you know where to go to modify. And also it helps you keep the credentials out of your code base. Why is this nice? Because it makes the transition from prototype to production much easier. You just change it to a different environment. And it makes it possible to write generalizable and reusable code. that does not require, hopefully, significant modification. I mentioned the data catalog earlier, and this is managing your loading and saving of your data. You can use it as YAML API or as code API. There is versioning supported on all file-based systems, and it's extensible, so if there's not an existing connector out of the box in the library, it's fairly straightforward and fairly easy to write up your own connector. And this is just a sample of the connectors that we have, so you can rely on pandas, on AWS, remote storage, Google, and so on. So why is this helpful to you? Hopefully that means that you'll never have to write a single line of code that is writing or reading a file or a database or a storage system. But as I said, if you have a connector that's not existing yet in the library, it's very straightforward to do it. It allows you to access the data without leaking credentials. And again, it makes it possible to write generalizable and reusable code. Nodes and pipelines. So this is our abstraction. We think of a node as a pure function in Python. A pure function in Python is a function that has no side effects. So it takes an input and spits out some output, and there's nothing weird happening in between. A node definition can support multiple inputs for things like table joins, or multiple outputs in case you are producing a train test split. And it kind of looks like this. Python function in the middle takes in some input, spits out some output. And so what a pipeline is just a collection of those nodes. And you have to define relationships and dependencies like this. So the output of this one could be the input to this node, and so on. And it takes the form of a DAG, so a directed acyclic graph. There is a way for you to visualize the pipeline. This is a separate Kedro plugin that is also open source, and you can install pip install Kedro Viz. And this is a powerful tool for communication, especially if you have non-technical stakeholders. This has been proved to be a very useful tool to make that communication easier and let them understand what is happening in your pipeline. There are a few deployment options, and we are working on more. So there are another 2 open source plugins, Kedro Docker and Kedro Airflow. Kedro Server is inner source, not open source yet, but we are gathering feedback and we're working on improving it before we release it to the world. The first 2 are quite straightforward, I think. Integration with Docker, integration with Airflow. Kedro Server is just surfacing a RESTful API, so you can trigger a pipeline run or monitor a pipeline run from by triggering a REST request, a GET or a POST. So why do we continue to use Kedro? A few reasons. We've noticed that the time to production has become more consistent. Our teams can more accurately estimate the time required to produce production-ready code, and also because there's less time that's needed for refactoring, that's also sped up the whole process. Increased collaboration. As I said before, our teams are very diverse, and it's making it easier for people from different backgrounds with different knowledge to come together and work on a code base that looks familiar, and they know where to look for what is relevant to their part of the job. And upskilled developers, our users are learning more about good software engineering practices, and we always like that because it means better quality of code and better production-ready code. Our main goals for the future, we've had a chat within the team, and we thought 2020 is the year of growth. We have focused our attention more on the deployment experience, and we're trying to develop an ecosystem of reusable code. And then from next year onwards, we would love it if the standard of building a data pipeline would be just using Kedro. And as I said, Kedro is actively maintained by Quantum Black. There are a few channels that you can reach out to us. Of course, you can send us a PR or an issue on GitHub. You can ask us a question on Stack Overflow. We monitor questions that are tagged with Kedro, and we try to respond as quickly as we can. And also we have our documentation on Read the Docs. So I'll open up for questions, and I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, if there's enough time for a demo or not.
Perfect.
Please.
I would say, well, first of all, thank you very much. It was a very thorough explanation. Thank you. I would say we do have time for a demo, and George is also asking if we can use Kedro in Kaggle, for example. Yeah.
So we don't think of Kedro as a workflow scheduler, but you can integrate it with a scheduler of your choice. You can either use Airflow, or you could integrate with writing a separate plugin and use it that way. That's answer your question.
Okay, so you could use Kaggle then, or you would have to use another pipeline.
So out of the box, there's no functionality at the moment that's doing that, and it's quite an open space. So we leave it to the user to set up their scheduling. We don't take care of that out of the box, but there's nothing stopping you from doing it.
Okay. Well, I can see here Yeto is saying that we have a big Kaggle community in Japan that uses Kedro, so it's like there's precedence there. Cool, perfect. I am very curious about that demo. I think we should go forward for that demo.
That's all right then. Can you see my terminal?
It's a bit small. Yeah, that's much better. Also, if you need anything, like if you want to use me as proxy, please feel free, okay?
I might, yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, so I've already gone ahead and created a Kona environment, and I have installed Kedro ahead of this because I thought it might take a bit of time. But I have Kedro and Kedro Viz. So let me go to a safe place and create a new project. So Kedro comes with some CLI commands. I will call this Dubliners, and it's prompting you for a few questions. And if you, well, I'll just click enter to save the same name everywhere. And yes, I want some example pipeline. Cool. So it says a best practice setup includes initializing Git and creating a virtual environment, which I already have, and then running Kedro install. So I went inside the folder and doing Kedro install. And this will pick up all the requirements that come with the project.
Cool, perfect. So while that's running, there's another question for you. So this Kedro, Kedro is similar to MLOPS. Alpa is asking.
What's the name of the product? Sorry,
OPS.
MLOps. It is a tool that could be used for MLOps, if that's what they're asking. I'm not sure if MLOps is a library in itself or not.
Let's find out. It's still, oh, it finished installing. Okay. No, so apparently ML Ops is a practice for collaboration and communication between data scientists and operations professionals. And so not necessarily a library. So I don't think it's the same then.
Right, okay, yeah. So if you're referring to the practice, we tend to think of our main users as being data engineers and data scientists. But there will be people that are putting this into production, right? And we are trying to obviously cater for them as well. It is a subset of our users, and we're, as I said, for the year 2020, we want to focus on this deployment theme altogether more this year. So hopefully we'll improve that integration with that practice more. But I would say it doesn't, it's not in conflict with it by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, well, perfect. Thank you. And does that answer your question, Alba? Perfect, it does. Wonderful. So back to the demo then.
Right, so my installation finally finished. This is what comes out of the box in Kedro, well, in a Kedro project. So you have a configuration folder, docs, logs, notebooks, data, and source. Let me open this in PyCharm, because maybe it's easier to see the entire folder structure. And while I'm here, I'll go ahead and show you the pipeline as well. All right, so okay, in configuration, I have two environments, base and local. In local, there's not much at the moment, but in base, we have catalog, credentials, logging, and parameters.
Just 1 second, sorry, it's a bit hard to see. Could you make that a bit bigger for me, please?
I'm not sure how to do that. I didn't do anything for you, did it?
No, not really, but it's all right. I think, I don't know if it's just me. Yeah, did you try the Control Plus? I mean, it's a
yeah,
little
bit.
Yeah, no, that did. Yeah, perfect. That's awesome. Thank you.
Good measure. Okay, yeah, so you have to take my word for it, but we have a catalog YAML, and for now there's only one sample data set. It's a pandas data set in CSV, and it resides in here in a folder data _ raw iris CSV. We have a few folders in data. We have raw, intermediate, primary, feature, and so on, and that reflects the data engineering convention that we use at Quantum Black. You can feel free to use them as you wish. What else is interesting? Parameters. We have only 3 parameters. Again, standard YAML structure. We have some test data ratio, learning rate, And let me show you the pipeline that we are working with. So if you remember, I called Kedro Viz in here, and it opened up a Flask server on my local host. So this is my input data, and it's taking some parameter, the test data ratio, splits the data, trains the model, does some prediction, and then reports the accuracy. And these are all intermediary data sets, example model, example prediction, and so on. And you can interact with it as you wish. You can hide some data sets if you wish. It's not very helpful. Just hide some of the nodes, or hide some of the data sets, and the graph will re-render. You can also export the visualization. So if you want to save it as PNG, if you want dark theme or light theme, up to you. Filter some tags, or if you don't care about the label, so the name of the function, the name of the nodes, the name of the data sets, you can just work with symbols. And so if I try to go into the relevant code bit, there is let me close the server as well. There's a folder source. Requirements.txt is where you would include your requirements for packaging if you want to ship it as a Python wheel file. You have tests, again, test-driven development. And in here you have the source code. So you have a pipeline. We have a data engineering pipeline, data science pipeline, and the default pipeline that is run is just a collection of those two put together. And to show you in here, I have a nodes.py and a pipeline.py. I'll show you the pipeline. It's just a one node pipeline, so it's not particularly interesting, but the idea is you have a node running this function called split data. It takes example iris data as input, and also this parameter as input. These strings correspond to entries in your catalog YAML. So if you remember, I had this example iris data in here. And then these are the outputs: example train X, example train Y, test X, and test Y. And if I go back into the data science world, yeah, you have 3 nodes: train the model, predict, and report some accuracy. What else is interesting to show?
That's super interesting.
Oh, maybe round.py as well on here. So if there's something that the Kedro library doesn't support off the bat, the main orchestrator of all this is the project context. So this would be the place where you would override some functions. And we have some examples in our documentation as well of how you would want to do that.
Cool, perfect. Well, thank you very, very much. I just think I'm a little bit self-aware of time now, but it was a great demo. Well, thank you very much. It was a great talk as well. And thank you, Chuck, as well, for coming. Thank you for presenting. Thank you for being so nice. And well, I see you guys soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lace. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, thank you very much for our attendees. And well, we're back next Monday then with another section for PyData. Thank you very much, guys, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you. Thank you, Alpa. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Lovely to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.